I'm never going to be the greatest guitar player, but that what can I do craft-wise so that my playing enhances the thing? Because I'm very lyric and poetic focused. How to enhance that, and then that ties back to personal development, which is just the in some ways the self-respect and self-image to say that, what I'm trying to do is important enough to actually give the craft time. Welcome to the Embracing Mystery podcast. Join us as we explore together ways that we can embrace creative and spiritual mystery in our lives and simultaneously find ourselves embraced in the mystery of compassionate, creative interconnection, held by what may be called the divine or source or consciousness or even mystery itself. In the process, we seek to become more fully ourselves, find our home and places of belonging, and grow as creative, spiritual, and relational beings. Well, welcome to this episode of Embracing Mystery Podcast. We're going to, in some ways, be continuing. This is kind of a part 2 of how does your own personal growth and development matter for your art. And we started to get into that in the last episode, looking at it from certain angles. We started to scratch the surface of how our own development and our own stories as human beings and artists might affect our art. We want to talk today more about continuing to press into that, and really including our personal development as human beings, as well as whatever that may mean relative to our craft, whatever craft may mean, and not necessarily as separate items in our lives, but pressing further into that. So Stephen will be facilitating that conversation today. I'm going to open us with practice, and I'm going to focus it on just sort of gratitude as a general posture and attitude for a couple of reasons. One being that finding gratitude happens to be the theme of this month's Table Collective Art Shares, both our virtual Asia-based art share and our in-person Los Angeles-based art share. So it just seemed appropriate to do that, but also because, as we've hinted at and commented about in prior conversations, this is actually Raymond's final episode with us as a conversation partner, and I'm grateful for Raymond's help, not just in the actual conversation, but both Naz and Raymond, along with Stephen and I, were very instrumental in developing the concept of this, coming up with the vision for the podcast, how we would do things, the name of the podcast, the episode content, etc. So we're going to do a gratitude practice here in just a moment, but I'm just grateful for you, Raymond. Thanks for being part of this.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me, you guys, and kind of, thinking of me as a collaborative partner. So I'm appreciative of that and honored. And yeah, it's been a good run. And I feel like even in the few episodes that I've taken part in, we covered like an astounding amount of ground. So yeah, looking forward to where it goes from here. Yeah.
And I'm also grateful for the things that you're doing, that you're trying to give more time to, which have led to the decision to pull back on several things. Sad that this is one of them you've had to pull back on, but I really understand and very much support the things you're trying to give time and energy to.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's take a moment. It's going to be very simple. I'm simply going to take a moment of silence after I give us our little bell clue, and just pause in silence to think about areas where you are experiencing gratitude, and that could be an imaginative, you might remember a person and see their face. It might be a memory of something that happened this week. It could be older than that, etc. It may be something you're grateful for in your own recent development. So I'm going to give us a moment of silence just to focus on those things and say thank you, no matter who you feel the direct object of that gratitude might be, including yourself. Sometimes it's good to say thank you to yourself. So let's take a moment and do that. All right. As we come back, and before turning it over to Stephen, just thank you again, Raymond. So, all right. Stephen.
All right.
And thank you for doing this.
Yes, of course.
More gratitude. Yes.
Of course.
Okay.
As Kevin explained as was in the intro, our starting question is looking at how you view the relationship between craft and growth as a whole person, psychologically, relationally, spiritually, however you might define personal growth. And I'm not assuming an either or here, but looking kind of at the complex relationships of those things. And then as we get into it, your own stories. So if that is a helpful illustration, you can go ahead and even begin with that. But open the floor.
I guess I can take a crack at it. The first thing that kind of comes to me is this period in my early 20s, after I kind of like left the structures of both school and then, sort of organized religion, and setting out to kind of define the boundaries and like the trajectory of my own life. There's a concept from like, I don't know if like Richard Wagner, controversy acknowledged, is like the first person who kind of came up with the idea, but this term in German called Gesamtkunstwerk, which sort of translates to like a total work of art, where, sort of, for example, like in opera, you have like music and stage design and, the everything like coming together to like holistically, like in a Gestalt way, be about this particular aesthetic vision. Kind of like thinking of my life that way and sort of like approaching like sort of self-creation as a craft. So like for me, since that time explicitly, the notion of personal growth and the notion of artistic sort of craft have been like the same thing. And certainly as it bears out in either, my philosophical writing or my, musical work, or if I'm writing a poem or whatever, not only does that all kind of bleed together and cross-pollinate, but none of that, if I don't have like my basic sort of needs or like a basic sense of like health or like stability, if I don't have that as a foundation, the rest of it seems to collapse pretty quickly.
Right.
So even just from like a practical standpoint, the notion of like sort of like taking care of yourself and treating that like your life, like your biological life as a craft, it feeds into the other levels. That makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah. It's a really beautiful concept, actually. Yeah.
I'm like, why didn't I live my life that way so far?
Well, you're still young.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and also it's like it can, the potential danger in that, I feel like, is like maybe everything can sometimes be too weighty. And you're just like, oh my God, all these different things that I'm trying to kind of do at once. And holding that with the appropriate amount of lightness is also becomes part of the program, because otherwise it's
a lot to handle.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. It's like, it's daunting, and you just kind of can absorb a sense of failure very quickly.
Did you find yourself kind of parsing out moments that you were working on, like, okay, I know you play guitar, like I'm going to work on my musicianship here in terms of how I play. In your head, does that at all go into a different category than like, okay, I'm going to go to therapy or whatever? I don't know what you've done in your life, but like whatever those steps are to get healthy as a person.
Meaning, like, do I kind of view...
Are you able to hold them together in practical reality? Like, so as a concept, that sounds amazing to me. So I'm just curious how you experience that. Yeah.
So as a governing metaphor, I think that school is still really useful for me. Because, sort of school was what I was good at. And I think left to my own devices, things can kind of like become kind of a little amorphous, which gets in the way of doing anything productive not productive, but sort of like aligned with that vision that I was talking about before. And so, so I kind of try to treat my life still as if, you know, it's sort of broken up into like semesters and classes. And so like,
You have a focus.
yeah, they're like sort of like, you know, sort of small but regular and focused periods of stuff. Like I'll make sure to do a bit of music practice every day. I'll make sure to like read and or digest notes on things that I've read every day. And so on and so forth, and kind of just like block it out as if I was looking at a course schedule week by week.
Like
and
highly disciplined about it.
I mean, ideally, in practice, it, you know, vacillates wildly, but
There's
yeah.
an intention, and there's a map on your calendar, or mental space.
Mental
This is what I'm
calendar.
intending to do.
Yeah, yeah. And no, but it literally is like a Google Calendar. I think I think none of that would happen without without the
Kind
alphabet
of charting
company.
it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. We'll come back to that. But I'm curious how you all find yourselves responding, similar, different, or
Yeah.
to any part of what Raymond was sharing.
I think I can relate to, you said like in your 20s. I'm sorry, I forgot what you said. Having
Oh
like,
yeah. So after I left kind of grad school and I started working, and then shortly after I left the Christian church, then I was just like, all right, well, no one's telling me how to live my life. I kind of need to figure this out for myself.
because I'm thinking back to when I was a kid, I had more of a discipline. Like every day after school, I would draw something. But then when I went off to college, I fell off of that. And then I am coming out of like a 10-year hiatus. So all through my 20s, I did not touch my art. And I kept telling myself, no, I got to get a stable job. Like, I got to get my life together before I can go through this. And that's what's been keeping me from re-engaging with that part of myself. Yeah, for a while. And then I met a guy who was a creative. And I was kind of inspired by that because we were very similar, introverted, shy, but he's going out and still doing the things. And I was like, wait, if he can do it, so can I.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
And that kind of that relationship brought me back
Okay.
to myself a little bit after seeing that. Yeah.
Did you notice any shifts in the kind of work you do, or some quality of it, having had that kind of gap where you were doing things, working on yourself in your life?
I
Going-
feel
coming
like I
back to
was
it.
just kind of surviving in my 20s.
Okay. So that wasn't like, okay, we got personal growth figured out.
I feel like I'm going through a lot of
Okay.
personal growth
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have this space to sit down and actually
Okay.
think about my 20s
Right.
now.
in that case, is that shaping then what you're doing in the kind of work, or how you even
Yes,
feel about
I
it?
think
when you
so.
make it?
I'm not ready to talk about it because
Okay,
I'm
sure.
kind of hermiting right now and thinking about it and how I want to approach in the next year. Maybe stepping back from things, reprioritizing some things. Yeah, maybe focusing on one type of art
Okay.
a little bit before, instead of dabbling in
Get it
all
into your
these
Google
two-
Calendar.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
or other equivalent.
Sure, we're not
management
we're not
software.
sponsored by Google.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, not just one thing I wanted to pick up on was like the relational quality, that like it's important
Yeah.
in terms of personal growth. It's never solitary
No, it's not. Yeah.
exclusively.
Yeah.
That like,
Right.
you know, like my now ex is like still one of the most inspiring people I know, and like I know that my life would not have the way that it looks like right now without having been in that relationship. And so just to your point, the communal aspect of this is also
Yeah,
important.
it didn't last, but I guess he was in
Still.
my life
Yeah,
to bring
exactly.
me back to
Yeah.
myself
That's
somehow.
nice.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Reconnected you to that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm really grateful for Stephen for the intentionality about bringing craft into the conversation, because that's not where I tend to go when I think about the relationship between my growth and my art. Because so as I've been reflecting on it, I have a love-hate relationship with cultivating the craft side and the sort of skill side of things. It goes way back to my first cello lessons, and
You don't currently play cello, do you?
I do not. But in grammar school, elementary school, 4th grade, I started playing cello, and of course, you've got to learn scales, and you've got to learn these basic, hot cross buns, and all these, basic little tunes to get you to play. And I didn't care at all about that. I wanted to figure out how to play green sleeves in my mind, and like just stuff that was in me, and didn't see the connection between, but you could do that a lot easier if you'd also learn some of this. And so I still have that struggle. And I think it's been actually very recent that I've realized And it kind of, part of what sparked it, Raymond, is your idea of this kind of this total piece of art where everything is part of the art, and that I'm never going to be the greatest guitar player, but that what can I do craft wise so that my playing enhances the thing? Because I'm very lyric and poetic focused. How to enhance that, and then that ties back to personal development, which is just the in some ways the self-respect and self-image, to say that, what I'm trying to do is important enough to actually give the craft time. And I think there's a personal development piece of that, of the self-love that I think you use different terms, but kind of that self-care.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I'm sort of processing right now, is that it's okay to give that more time and not just be like, okay, I got the lyrics, I got the melody, I'm ready, blah, 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 blah. And
so you're saying
that's good enough, like that guitar piece is good enough, move on, now we'll give it some more time. Let's see what happens.
If I'm following, you're saying a way of caring for or loving yourself is valuing your work enough to say, I want to actually work on the skill side of it enough.
Yeah, this is actually important enough to really do. And you can.
What I make matters.
Yeah.
So take it seriously.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I'm still...
Well, and
I'm 67, and that's like a new thought. Oh, you could work on your craft. Like,
sure. Well, and I think about this question because I know there's people who I've met where it's like they'll explain what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And you can tell there's a frustration in their own explanation of, if I could just pull this off, this would be amazing, beautiful. I have a vision for it. I have a way of seeing that I want to communicate, and don't have craft, at least craft understood as skill set in this case, to pull it off. And that's really unfortunate. And I think obviously that's where all sorts of classes to get those skills are incredibly important. But I don't mean to bifurcate them in that sense, because I also think for me, craft includes like how am I as a person intuitively processing and getting my ideas, where you're pulling these things from, which has everything to do with who you are and how you see the world. So,
right.
Yeah, for sure. I just, as you guys were both talking there, I was just thinking about like technique, craft, all these different things. Like you're saying, they're tools for expression. So like I think of I guess this is sort of like is this like a tarot thing? Yeah, it's a tarot thing. The magician card in like the major arcana in a tarot deck. Typically you see the figure is like kind of like got one hand pointed up in the sky, one arm kind of pointed down to the ground, right? So this idea of like being a lightning rod, a conduit, which I think we've talked about at least a couple of times in previous things. But to me, it seems like craft technique, all we're talking about here is like trying to find and then, become a more and more efficient conductor of whatever electricity you're trying to grab and then put into the world.
That's a good image.
And so that's as much about removal of blocks as it is of kind of like gaining strength.
Yeah.
So it's like if there are, maybe this is also kind of like a Taoist thing, but like, if there are kind of rocks in the path of like the flow, or like, the just like the way, the Tao of things, it's like creatively, then how can you kind of strategically evade and dodge and maneuver those things to get what you're trying to put out or what you're trying to express out there? And I think that can be a really liberating view of technique, because like to your point, Kevin, like I don't do scales. I did that when I was like 15.
Yeah.
Now it's just like
I gave up well before that.
No, but like, to your point, it's like it's boring, and I would definitely be a much better guitarist if I maybe practiced chromatics a lot more. But I think even just kind of like showing up regularly in service of that is can be a way of keeping that fire going. Yeah,
that makes sense.
I mean, the counter to that is I was in a band once with a guy who was an amazing guitarist. I mean, his touch and the speed and nimbleness, etc. but he didn't actually have any music in him.
Mm.
It all sounded kind of like he was doing scales, but I think he had cultivated the craft, but not the self, right? And
Because I was going to ask you, what do you mean when you say he doesn't have the music in it?
yeah, there wasn't melodic stuff. There wasn't nothing grabbed you out of it. Like a guy like a guitarist like Mark Knopfler will say, "I don't play guitar right. I'm not doing it right." But when you listen to him play, there's music there. Mm-hmm. There's soul. There's he's in it, right? And I didn't feel like this guy was in it. Yeah. He was playing it, but he wasn't in it. I think that's where craft and self formation and cultivation they really are necessary. And I think it's good that you intentionally kept them together in our conversation. So, yeah. So anyway.
That also, sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, like, that also makes me think of, like, we all know people who know how to use a lot of $5 words and constrain them together. And at the end of like a paragraph of them talking, you're like, what did they actually say?
Yeah.
And it reminds me of this.
And is it interesting?
Yeah. And is it interesting? Right. Is it expressive of anything that you actually believe? Like, it reminds me of this like quote from Tom Verlaine, who's one of my heroes for sure. Guitarist for the band Television, and the late great Tom Verlaine. He basically said something to the effect of like, nowadays, kids these days, they're like a lot of like young players who can play like Danny Gatton licks note for note. They don't know what they're playing, but they do it flawlessly.
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of like what you're talking about, where technique for technique's sake is a form of expression, but I think maybe it can feel like it is lacking a certain sense of conviction.
Soul or something. I don't mean soul like the genre. I mean like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like teaching or being in school or like becoming an expert, right? It starts to be, it's so familiar to you that, I don't know, that
becomes rote.
Yeah, it becomes rote, and you don't have that freshness of like the beginner's mind or the bravery maybe of a beginner's mind.
Yeah. I heard somebody describe a professor once and a class that, the lectures went from the professor's notes to the student's notes without passing through the minds of either one. and that's kind of that, okay, we're,
Yeah. Well, and I think in terms of creative work, it's like, I wonder how much of it is like, I'm trying to find language for this, but it's like, is that person living on the surface of life? Like, there's enough details of just surviving that can occupy all of your mind space, all of your existence. I don't know what the right words or languages to explore this, but like how to describe people who are living at a deeper layer of them, connection with themselves, connection with those around them, and with nature, with however they understand reality, but something that's compassionately connecting them in a way of seeing and appreciating, or even just knowing them, their own self.
Yeah.
Like in a nuanced way.
And I was on, I shared the stage at a Writers Round event this last week with another artist, and she had really incredibly unique melodic phrasings in her music, and moving from different time signatures and just all kinds of stuff. And I was telling her how just really beautiful and unique all that was, and her lyrical uniqueness. And this relates to this craft and self issue. Because she said, I've had people telling me you shouldn't name the song that, nobody's going to know what you mean, or your tempos need to be more consistent. You're moving all around, and your song structures they don't make sense to people, and your melodies are and I was like, that's actually like the strength of what you're doing is all the stuff they're trying to tell you to shut down. Don't do it.
Yeah.
So at some point there probably is a okay conversation to have about craft from that angle. Like, here's what a listener might expect. So if you're really wanting to be heard, do you craft it towards that or not? And how much? And when do you just say, that's your idea, but this is my craft. This is how I'm crafting this particular piece of art. And being aware of certain forms. Like I think poets who aren't aware of the poetic heritage of certain forms like sonnets and things, I think being aware of it and then breaking it with your craft can be very powerful. I think dismissing it can sometimes, and that's, Kevin, you mean like you not playing scales? Yeah, yes. Yes. But anyway.
Yeah, kind of like the fine line between not rejecting, like not sort of doing, technique for technique's sake, but on the other hand, not rejecting any sense of like theory or technique or training out of hand just because it's like, it's not what the cool kids do.
Right.
I think what you kind of hit there with like learning rules, learning theory and technique and skills, but not treating them as like rules.
Right.
They are, again, sort of tools for expression. They are conventions. They are things to jump off from into your own personal territory.
Right.
I think that's that's important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, then it becomes a trap or a formula.
Yeah.
I think that's what people can kind of smell.
Because I know you do a lot with some amazing poetry, Naz, and then your visual art as well. And there's obviously a whole heritage of visual art, and then you're tied into South Asian heritages of all that stuff. So I just wonder for you, what's it like to process all that stuff? There's certain artists and poets and others that you're somewhat in that stream, and yet you're unique, so I don't even know if I'm asking you a question. I'm just fascinated by your art. So I guess I'm
I think I just like I'm in that phase of just experimentation, because I wouldn't call myself a very good poet. I feel like I'm not there, to be honest.
Well, we can have that argument offline, but yeah. What I have heard and experienced, I'm not trying to embarrass you, but anyway. I just think it's really amazing poetry. So yeah.
Well, I guess maybe to your point, like taking you up on your stance of you could do better, like how do you then relate to this idea of skill developing craft technique? Like, is that something that you are interested as part of your exploration? Like to what degree do you kind of deliberately set aside time to do that in your poetry and things like that?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this recently, because poetry is, I started off as an English major in college, and I changed majors to anthropology, so I didn't go down that track to become formally like trained in poetry, which is why I feel like I can't call myself a poet quite yet.
Okay.
Because there's that, but I feel like moving forward, I do want to take it more seriously with my writings. I'm trying to get published in different places. That's one of my goals. So in the next coming year, I actually feel like I need to study it. So I need to read more, read the craft, because I'm into not just American poetry, but South Asian poetry, and kind of studying the background and heritage and the language, and seeing how much of that I can engage with. So especially like the ghazal form. I really like that form. I will never be able to write it in Urdu or Persian or Bengali, but maybe a little bit in English.
It's such a rich tradition.
But if I want to write it well in English, I have to kind of listen to it in the languages that come before. So kind of taking more of that, engaging in poetry more seriously that way. Yeah.
That's beautiful to hear. Yeah.
At the same time, or do you find yourself processing aspects of who you are as you engage with these forms? Like, has that changed in recent ways as you're exploring it? To put it on the personal growth side, I'm curious how those two are coming together.
Yeah, I think because I find that in the ghazal form of poetry, ghazal poetry comes from ancient Arabia, and then it spread into Persia and South Asia, and there's a specific rhyme scheme that it has. I feel like that form can hold intensity, and that's kind of what I want to explore, because I've been described as intense. And I think in this culture, that's something to be ashamed of, which is why I can't find a poetic structure to engage that with in like American tradition. So I'm kind of looking out.
So it lets you pull parts of actually who you are, put it into that form.
I don't know. That's kind of where I am. I don't know.
Well,
great.
it'd be amazing to see if English can wear those clothes of that form, you know.
Yeah, I
and-
mean,
and
that's the primary
some of it
language.
is the language, the sounds of those languages as well are so unique and unique to us, and beautiful, obviously.
Or maybe I personally just find more intensity in like the ghazal form. But
yeah.
because I feel like when I was an undergrad, I took like a poetry workshop, and it's something I'm working on, and I kept getting feedback on for poetry is that I'm not concrete enough.
Yeah.
I bring too much emotion into like my poetry. So kind of looking at that, I don't know, looking at those different types of things.
Well, I will look forward to seeing how that develops. Yeah.
I think that goes back to something that Stephen was saying earlier about this idea of like having something in your head, or like seeing someone having something in their head, but just like also seeing the struggle of them trying and just being frustrated with not having the tools to express it.
Yep.
So like to your point, I think part of the benefit of craft and like of practice is the exploration and the absorption of form, or like different styles, because different styles become kind of like different, again, sort of what, not weapons, but like conduits, lightning rods to grab and hold and kind of like contain things that you found, you were unable to express with like insufficient means, right? Like, I think part of the reason that for, as a analogous example, part of the reason that attracted me to like the electric guitar in the first place was a sense of like intensity. Like there's like a rawness.
That makes sense with your music.
You can
the dynamic control, like as a kid, being introverted and not necessarily having the emotional and or sort of like social tools to be able to properly express myself in the way I wanted to, play a power chord, and all of a sudden,
oh wow,
all of a sudden you have something that is now your friend and your tool and a way of like,
it's really a great way to put it. Yeah.
But that toolbox is going to be different for every person.
Yeah. That's really good.
For myself, I feel like I'm sure there's plenty of craft things I should probably be learning, but I've been using it, and I think this shapes some of how I was asking the question, but I've been using it more almost as a journaling process.
Sure.
But not always just here's what I'm feeling. Sometimes it's here's where I'm feeling like a sense of invitation in my life to grow up, of like, okay, how do I live into letting go of some of my attachments, or not letting them affect me in the same way to cause suffering for myself? Or how do I have more compassion for people that I'm wrestling with that with? And so I'll put it into an art form as a way of making me have to deal with it even as I'm making it. And so I think that's part of why I frame the question of how our growth connects with the craft is, and not everyone does this. There's so many different ways that we create and motivations for creating, but I in particular have been doing it in a way where I would not make this art last time. I had a long period of inaction creatively, like Nas had, but I picked it back up in the middle of massive transition in my life. So it's been super helpful for that. I'm curious what form it'll take as things kind of settle. But yeah, I don't know.
All three of you have said things that are making me think in terms of craft related to the form of the art we're doing, whether it's a visual piece that we're trying to, kind of set ourselves an assignment, as it were, or a prompt to fit that in a certain form or a certain poetic form, or whether it's the ghazal or whatever it is, rhyme schemes, sonnets, etc. What I've found, and I'd be interested in what you all say about this, is sometimes that form, because you're trying to fit into it, it forces you to take certain directions. So a rhyme scheme, for example, by limiting the vocabulary you can pick to fit the rhyme, forces you to consider word options in a different way that might not have been what you were starting to want to say in that line.
Yep.
But to get it to rhyme, you suddenly are like, oh, that opens this whole door, right? And now the song's in a whole other hallway than you first thought. And I find that really, really interesting. And I want to explore that a little more, even like just music instrumentally, even like, so does, if I was a more accomplished instrumentalist, would that take things in directions I hadn't thought? And I've experienced some of that. So anyway, I think that can be true visually and poetically and musically and all these different ways. I would think sculpturally as well. I don't know, but
well,
yeah.
Visually, I was just thinking about how I did just from the start of something I make. What's the shape? Is it horizontal? Vertical,
already is determining.
And what aspect ratio is it? Yeah. Immediately, I'm then rethinking how I'm putting things there and what relationships thing have within it, where I might go, and what that communicates, especially if I'm actually trying to say something with a piece.
And now it's part of the conversation partner, right? Oh, I chose this shape. Now that is making
I can't
choices.
change it for myself.
Yeah,
when
I know.
I'm doing digital work, but
it might
if you're
tell
going
you
and
no.
painting, you might not be able to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your computer just crashes and then you're like, okay, well, I guess it wasn't meant to be.
You're only allowed to use this.
Yeah. Kevin, when you were talking, I just, because you had mentioned scales before, that is like an important part, I think, of how I approach things like compositionally is is this idea of applied constraint. That, I will take a section and I'm kind of pretty modal about it. I'll be like, okay, this section is going to be like almost rigidly in this particular scale, using these scale degrees, these intervals, these relationships, these chord, like these sort of like, chord relationships. And that, like even musically, beyond lyrics, it'll force me into taking turns and making creative decisions that I wouldn't have otherwise made if left to just sort of like,
if you did it a different way.
If I did it a different way, or if I was like sort of like left to kind of just like freeform it.
Freeform it. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation for me. I'm leaving with a lot of stuff that I want to continue to process from it. Thank you, each of you, for contributing to my own growth through this and my thinking in new ways about craft and how that relates to things. So thank you for that. And one more time, thank you, Raymond. Really grateful to have you. And welcome back anytime. Maybe you can come back as a guest to the podcast, because we will be,
if you want to,
we will be incorporating guests in the future as well. So as always, please, if you find us, subscribe, send us comments. It really, really helps us tell other people about it. And we'll see you in the next episode.